Hey class, welcome to Introduction to Philosophy. I'm Dr. Brian Harding and I'm going to be your professor today, and I'm going to take a few minutes in this video to tell you a little bit about myself and a little bit about the class. So, starting with myself, I've been teaching philosophy since about 2001. My first philosophy class that I taught was in New York when I was a graduate student at Fordham University, which is in the Bronx, New York. It was fun to go there because although I mainly grew up in Texas, I was born in the Bronx, and it was fun to come back and see all the places that I always heard about in my family stories growing up and things. And had a great time in the Bronx and at Fordham. And when I finished my doctorate there, I bounced around for a little bit to Atlanta and then to Cincinnati and then finally back home to Texas, where I've been ever since. And I've written a couple books that I'll show to you. The first one I wrote, this was based on my doctoral dissertation at Fordham University. It's called Augustine and Roman Virtue, and it's mainly about the relationship between Augustine of Hippo and ancient philosophy, Roman philosophy in particular, but also sort of just general ancient Roman ideologies about virtue and citizenship and things like that. Following that, I didn't write any books for a while, but I did edit a book on what's called early phenomenology. I did this with my friend Mike Kelly, who's out in San Diego. And phenomenology is a school of philosophy that was basically born in the 20th century, and it's been going strong since 1900, and we edited this book together focusing on early figures in phenomenology that we thought have been unjustly neglected. I contributed an essay on a guy named Jose Ortega y Gasset, who is one of my favorite philosophers and I think really an understudied figure. And also, it's worth noting, a very, very good writer, which is hard to find in philosophy. Then finally, my most recent work, this came out about 2 years ago, is Not Even a God Can Save Us Now, reading Machiavelli after Heidegger. And this is a weird book. I'm not going to try to tell anyone that it's not. I wrote it to entertain myself and to answer some questions that I had, not to sort of contribute anything to an ongoing scholarly discussion. So in the book, I bounce back and forth between obviously Machiavelli and then a 20th century phenomenologist named Heidegger and some other figures like Jacques Derrida and René Girard, and focusing on the relationship between philosophy and violence in all of these figures. It was a fun book to write, but it is admittedly weird. I'm filming outside because my house is a chaos on the inside, and I'm sure many of you might have the same story to tell with homeschool for COVID and all of those things. So, about the class. The class that we're going to do begins with Socrates, and the basic storyline or narrative of the class is to follow the figure of Socrates as it is adapted and represented in different moments in time and places in the history of philosophy. So, naturally enough, since Socrates was an ancient Greek, we begin with the ancient Greeks, and we'll look at Plato's representation of Socrates, which is generally the sort of the canonical one that everyone starts with. And then secondly, we'll look at Xenophon's presentation of Socrates, and he gives a slightly different picture of who Socrates is and what Socrates is about. And then when we finish with Plato and Xenophon, we'll leave the ancient Greeks behind and move to the early medieval period, where we're going to look at two interesting figures and their relationship to Socrates and Platonism. And that is Abu Yusuf al-Kindi, who is generally considered the first major philosopher to write in Arabic. And then Augustine of Hippo, who is a philosopher, theologian, and bishop from North Africa, who he wrote in Latin. And was very influential for the development of philosophy and theology for the next 800 to 1,000 years. But actually, Augustinianism is still going strong, whence why I wrote the book on it. And so I hesitate. So then, so that'll sort of be our introduction to how the Socratic legacy is sort of absorbed and retrieved in the medieval era. And then we'll look at some early modern figures. Machiavelli, because he's a lot of fun. And he's also a good writer. He's a very entertaining writer. He's very, spicy because of the immorality and the sort of just the general Machiavellianism of Machiavelli. Then we'll look at Descartes, and Descartes is, often called like the first modern philosopher. I don't entirely believe that, but it's, all of these things. Whenever someone's called the first this or the first that, it's always oversimplifying. Like even Al-Kindi, is he the first philosopher to write in Arabic? Who knows? He's the first one we know about, but there could have been people before him. So, in any case, Descartes is often called the sort of the first modern philosopher, and we'll see why when we look at Descartes. And then we'll finish up Descartes and turn to the 20th century, where we'll look at two figures. The first, Ludwig Wittgenstein, who's one of the most influential figures in 20th century philosophy, and a very interesting guy in his own right. And then Leopoldo Zea, and an essay he wrote called Philosophy as Commitment. And Zea is one of the more influential figures in the development of Mexican philosophy in the 20th century. He did a lot to introduce and I guess you could say publicize existentialism in Mexican philosophy. And he wrote, what's often like the text on the development of philosophy in Mexico in the 19th century called, and it's about, I think it's called Positivism in Mexican Philosophy. And he's a very important figure, so we'll round out the class with him. And what you'll see as you go through all these readings is that all of these figures are, some explicitly, some implicitly, wrestling with the legacy of Socrates and trying to adapt it, resist it, bend it, or break it, as the case may be. So hopefully by sort of designing the class this way, you'll get both a coherent story as opposed to just like every day it's a new philosopher and there's really no connection between them, like in a lot of survey classes. You'll get a coherent story, but you'll also get a sense of the depth and the breadth of philosophy, as we'll be reading people from all over the world, writing at all different times, but really in conversation with each other. And hopefully you'll find it, profitable and enjoyable, and it will somehow contribute to having a better life. Because that's really what philosophy, especially as we read Plato, as you'll see, that's really what the goal of philosophy is to try to live a better life and to give us tools for that. Sometimes philosophy drifts away from that pursuit and tries to become something more academic and more scientific, which we sort of have to because we live and work in a university, but ultimately that's not the point. So in terms of university life, you can look at the syllabus and see the assignments and the grades and all of those things for the class. And I think it's largely self-explanatory, so I won't waste time on this video to go over it. I will say that as the semester goes on, I'll be making more videos and also be putting up like PowerPoints and notes on the various people that we read. I'll try to keep my videos short. I've found that, after about 10 minutes, most people turn off the video anyway, so there's no point in, making a 30-minute video because no one's going to watch it. So, and I'll try to post at least 1 or 2 videos a week, but we'll see what happens. And if you need anything from me, reach out to me via email. That would be the best way, since campus access is weird. And I think that should do it. Oh, all of the books are free. I put them all online for you so you don't have to buy a single book for the class. And I believe it's all legal, but just in case it's not, don't tell anyone. Just kidding.